today. All right. In Mark chapter 1, verse 41, Jesus says, I am willing, be cleansed. We are St. Paul Lutheran Church. Good to remember these things. You can find our website at sb815.org. It's minimalistic. There's not a lot there, but you can always point people there for our service times. We are UAC. We hold the unaltered Augsburg Confession. That's why we confess the Athanasian Creed on Trinity Sunday. We are LCMS. That's Lutheran Church Missouri Synod at the Walk for Life and Family in Rockford. Yesterday, I met a young man who was asking questions about Lutherans, and I had to clarify that we are not the Lutherans that there are a lot of who promote a lot of things that we do not promote, things that are not pro-Bible, pro-marriage, pro-family, or pro-life, although they claim to be pro-grace. So the LCMS, we're the Bible-believing Lutherans. That's what we are. It's the best way to think of it. And again, I just said what we are: pro-grace, pro-Bible, pro-marriage, pro-family, pro-life. You, St. Paul, I'm teaching to be a Psalms praying, Proverbs quoting, red letter following, Protestant Christian congregation of believers in Jesus Christ because he is risen. Alleluia. And you are set apart for discipleship and giving as the kingdom of God. All right. Back to Mark chapter 1, and then we'll look at Joshua chapter 1 and touch on chapter 2 as well. Not as much line by line through all of this today. I want to open up with a problem that's in Mark if you read commentaries, which you probably don't, most of you here. Although maybe some of you have at times picked up a book from CPH or from some Christian bookstore that's like Jeremiah, like a Bible study on Jeremiah, and you're going to go through that book. This is effectively a commentary. And it is the way that outside of what we would call lay circles in the elite world of the ministers is kind of the way everybody talks to each other across denominations. It's like a church-wide exchange of information. It's very formal, it's very rigid, it's very line upon line, precept upon precept. And yet it's also not bad. You find a lot of good stuff in the commentaries. So we were taught at the seminary, okay, this commentary is by a guy who doesn't believe in the resurrection and he thinks women should be pastors, but his notes on archaeology are pretty good. And so you kind of got to dig in there to find this stuff. Okay, so in the commentaries and the way that commentaries think about the Bible, which I would contest is a bit Platonic, they think Mark has a problem. I think Mark has a lot of problems, actually. I'm not going to get into all of them, but Mark's just a sore thumb in gospel studies. And one of the problems is this thing that they will call the Markan secret. Okay, so this is a big prefab to get you to the Markan secret, also known as the Messianic secret, but that doesn't like have the same ring and go as far. And so Markan secret is kind of what kicks. And the market secret we see really driven home here in Mark chapter 1, verses 40 to 45, after he hails the leper, after all the glory of what happens, he does for the leper what he's already kind of done for the demons. And what that is he says, don't tell anybody, kind of. Or at least that's how the commentaries take it. Okay, so the market secret is that Jesus doesn't want anybody to tell anybody about himself. And why is that? And then from there, off we go on all manner of expiation and argument with nobody really knowing the answer because they're just confused by it, really, at the end of the day. Why would Jesus not want people to know he's the Son of God? It seems kind of strange. And so, what I want to do now today is not so much deal with the secret, is just show you how Jesus knows exactly what he's doing. The way of Jesus Christ is not like the ways of men. And particularly then, given four gospels, four accounts of Jesus who has one way, right? Three persons, one substance, right? Four gospels, one way. Right? We are to see something here that is to remediate or to keep us from falling off the other side of the other gospels. If you take away one, you'll lose something. And I will contest that the heartbeat of Mark is the humanity of Jesus, his manhood, his incarnation. And in this way, you see Jesus just being wise all the time. And so, what's wisdom when dealing with demons? Don't let them talk. Boom, done. Move on, right? No Markan secret, just wisdom for dealing with demons. Right? And so now we're going to move into wisdom for dealing with who? Who in this text is Jesus really dealing with? The leper? And then now let's be attentive. Let's look at the actual text, right? Um, it's after, right? Let's start with, yeah, 43, verse 43. And he strictly warned him. That's I mean, it's not mean. He's not being mean, but he's being direct. He warned him. Like, why would he warn him? What's he warn him? He warns him specifically. Um, he strictly warned him and sent him away at once. What's he warn him? Here's the warning. Sending is pretty important too, by the way. But see that you say nothing to anyone, not a full stop, not a full stop, but go your way, show yourself to the priest. It's not a secret. And he didn't say, don't tell anybody. He said, tell somebody very specific. And what we're going to see is the guy doesn't do it, and it's going to cause crowds, which we all assume is good. But in this book, Jesus is like, no crowds, please. Why? I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Okay. But let's just stick with the priest. That point alone is huge. What's Jesus really doing with these miracles is the question. One, he is foreshadowing heaven. He's showing us what the kingdom of God will be like in the blissful paradise of Eden, which comes to us when he returns as king. And indeed, we foretaste and rest in this when we sleep with him. To be sure, he's coming to unleash this man, this leper, this person who's lived how much of his life untouchable from his untouchableness. But he doesn't do it for everybody. And he even says, I'm only supposed to do it for the Jews more than once. And he even says it's a sign against them, which is to say, I'm going to come among them as their God, do everything that was prophesied that their king God would do without ever having to say, look, it's me. And they won't. They just won't. As a parable, a picture of how we are by nature always and without him. So, never then a condemnation of any individual, for each individual works it out with God ultimately, according to his divine plan. But this is about peoples and the hardening of Israel as a biblical parable of history. It's more than just the vineyard and the stones. It's you can actually look at the history of mankind, and through the center of it is the Bible. And through the center of that is a people who are both saved and not saved at the same time, because among them are the remnant of believers. And yet around them are the rest of the world, just as a smaller picture for us to learn about our plight, our state, and the goodness of his promises. For indeed, you're not of the unregenerate, you're not of the wicked. You are born again to a living hope through your baptismal promises. That's what your baptism means. If you don't believe you're baptized, I know, it happened. It's done. There's not much more to it than that. You're in the kingdom. As you're in the kingdom, pray toward Jerusalem, which means pray to Jesus now. So, okay. Jesus then is coming with this sign of him being Jerusalem, him being Israel, reduced to one. Look, I can heal a leper with my hand. The clean comes off on him rather than the dirty coming off on me. Wow, what a thing. Go show the priests first that I know the law, which is that if you have been with leprosy and excluded from the community, you're not allowed back in just because you think you're better. I don't care what that doctor or physician or prophet said he thinks. We're going to keep you from making everybody else sick. And so you talk to the priest first. That's the law. Okay, that's the law. And so Jesus is like, I follow the law, and they won't believe a thing, no matter how good I am. Here's my sign. And look, they won't believe a thing. They don't even listen to him. The guy runs off and talks to everybody else. Doesn't follow the law. Doesn't hear Jesus. That's the story of Mark. No one's listening. Jesus is talking, no one's listening. Yeah. Um, Go to the priest, offer your cleansing, the things Moses commanded. Jesus' signs are a legal testimony. Then from there, there's this just the wisdom. Okay, so if I am intending to quietly overthrow a country, you know what I don't want? Crowds. No crowds. Just my closest followers, 12 max. And we need to go and like talk for a long time, build some trust, come up with some ideas, really understand what we're going to do. So when we're doing it, everyone's doing the same thing, even if we're split up. You know what's going to get in the way of that? Crowds. Yeah. It's just wisdom. It's not a secret. He's just smart. And we're not. We're like crowds. Get big crowds. That'll grow the church. Like uh, that's an American lesson, right? Supersize it, something like that. So here, Jesus gives us a blessing of silence as wisdom. What happens when you don't go say what you think? The results are generally around you less confusion, more peace, and the possibility that you just see God's blessings, which are tough to see when you're talking. So I'm not saying never talk. I'm saying that silence is a blessing that American just didn't teach me. I'll tell you that. We don't know what it means to have silence. Got to be busy all the time. In this, then, Jesus is aware that fickle followers are going to get in the way of the future. If there's people just kind of reaching for miracles, he's going to get exhausted as a person and won't be able to say things. He'll be asleep in the boat. Like he's a man. This isn't surprising unless you forget that he's a man, which I think we have. I think that the American Jesus is like a puppet in the sky with a wax nose on him. And Mark's the counterpoint to this. This is a real dude. And he wasn't dumb at all. And he didn't just have a weird kind of esoteric secret. He was fighting demons and wicked men with lots of money. And he had a campaign to unleash amongst people with ideas that he wanted to be very clear, not confused by people shouting his name from the corner randomly while he's talking. We don't have any babies in here this morning with us, right? But we have, and we have quite a few in our congregation. And I hope you all know it's good to have crying babies in the church. It's good to help young parents learn how to not let them keep crying and to find ways to discipline a child through gentleness and wisdom. All of that is very healthy. But what I want you to just acknowledge is that if I'm talking and there's a baby crying, it's harder to listen to me, right? Like it's just a fact. It's a science, right? And so, okay, but what that means then is Jesus doesn't want people shouting at him while he's talking. And he's doing that to the demons specifically, or to unclean people who are just trying to get in the way, while also demonstrating the sign of his coming for all who will see it. So, in there, then, can you believe or think of the kingdom of Jesus Christ, this one that's there, but it's also here today, as I'm going to use some like pop terminology, and then I'll explain it. But we're a white pill splinter cell. Okay. White pill splinter cell. If you don't know the white pill, black pill, red pill, blue pill thing, it's an internet thing. And it has to do with whether or not you're aware that people are lying to you using movies, media, music, and the rest of it. And if you've been red pilled, you know that all the movies are lies trying to twist your mind. And if you've been blue pilled, you don't know that. And you believe whatever you see on a screen wherever you go. Of course, the Republican and Democrats pick up on all of this, and then what leads to black pill is caring about red pill, blue pill way too much. So you end up black pill, that is depressed, scared, afraid, not knowing what to do. And thus the white pill of optimism, promise, and hope in Jesus Christ being the one that we are a splinter cell of. Okay. We're a white pill splinter cell. Splinter cell. A splinter cell is a military event wherein you attempt to replicate yourself by seating yourself somewhere and cutting off all contact. They are in charge of themselves. They are never coming back. They are going to go until they die. And that's how you win, is you create these all over somebody else's country. We are a white pill splinter cell, the kingdom of Jesus Christ. That is indeed what he wants us to take away from the fact that he doesn't care so much about whether or not he's going to have a crowd looking at miracles. What he desires is that his people will listen to him because he knows that when they do, they will have hope. And thereby, wherever you go, you will be light, you will be salt, even to those who you can't feel like you are to them. Uh, I have there's a man locally. I'm not going to use his name. He's not one of our members, but he likes me a lot, and he speaks about me in front of people sometimes, and he says things that I just can't believe because it's not how I feel. But he sure thinks I feel that way. Why is that? Well, because Jesus' words are bigger than me. Doesn't matter what I feel like on the inside. What's coming out is true, and thereby, because of his spirit being who he is, increasingly gentle, kind, patient, or at least wanting to be so when I'm not, as opposed to the other side of things, the reprobate, the wicked, the unbelievers who don't give a hoot, not like your heart does. Not the way that you want to be good, the way Jesus wants you to be good. You want to go and sin no more. Would that you could. And I say to you, well, then stop worrying about it and do good. And when you find bad, repent and do good. It's not about trying to keep a perfect track record. It's about knowing that you walk cleanly and surely in the kingdom. So, one last piece from the Markan secret, messianic secret here. And this is to see, Jesus is in hiding for 3 years to create this apostolic deployment that he says repeatedly won't really start till after he's raised from the dead. So, you can see the wisdom of this guy in his teaching. He's not teaching about then, he's teaching about now. And so when he says, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, offer for your cleansing the things which Moses commanded as a testimony to them, there's wisdom here for you. And I would say it's some counterpoint to the last 100 years of rah, rah, mega mission shouting. Go tell everyone you know. And if you don't tell them, they're going to hell. And your conscience gets way too wrapped up in that. Way too wrapped up in that. It's not your job to worry about other people's salvation. It's your job to shine where you are with what you're given. And you've been forgiven, so you have no fear now. That's again the promise here. See how different that is? See how worth sharing that might be at the end of the day, right? It's not about come to our church where we have a theory about we're being saved. It's I'm actually kind of free in ways that they are not. In ways that they are not. All right. I think that's good for there because then we talked about, and with plenty of time, um, Israel as a parable. Let's go look at some Old Testament Sunday school material here with Joshua chapter 1 and chapter 2. I'm not going to go through the entire story again, but I'm going to try to pull out some of the key words in it and use them like frames to help you next time you go through it. Remember, and I hope challenge some of the lies that we have learned to believe in our times. And the first one, I don't want to take long with this, but it isn't. It's like a bomb kind of topic. It's right at the start. Joshua 1, verse 1 says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord. It comes across fine. Servant, no problem. The difficulty is the moment you study beyond English, every other ancient language really only has one word here, and it's not the word servant, it's the word slave, the way we use it. And there's a whole history to the word slave in America and how we use it in a weird way, in a way that really very few did in the past. I mean, we use the word slave kind of the way that you would have to think of uh, um, genocide, right? It's like not killing them, but keeping them in a corner. And that's what Pharaoh did to the Israelites in slavery. He kept them in a corner, right? They weren't allowed to be part of his people. But what the word here then means is not quite that either. That's like an extension in the corner of the history of the service industries of all mankind's time working with each other. Some corners, tribes kill tribes, but the idea of slavery, not being Slavic or slovenly or any of those such things, is supposed to be heard as servant. So you hear what I'm saying? If I say Moses, the servant of God, it's not enough. He's so much more than a waiter. Like, what's a server? It's a waiter in our country. What's a servant? I don't even know. Do you have any? Very few. Maybe someone who speaks a different language, which, by the way, would make them slovenly, in fact. So, like, we're so confused with this word. And it's a biblical word that has one very strong center in both Hebrew and in Greek. And I want to emphasize, Paul, a slave of Jesus Christ. You are baptized into slavery to the king. This isn't bad, this is good. Not to say that we should enact race baiting of any kind, but that we've got to recover the capacity to believe it's good to be under somebody and have them be in charge. Because that's what the word really means, that there is order. And truly, okay, you have two types of worker in the ancient world. You have the one who you house, and you have the one who you don't house. The day laborer who's supposedly free, but guess what? No, that guy's the poor one. Look at the day laborers. Look at them. And then look at the people who have jobs, say, I don't know, working for the king as an accountant, because that guy's a slave in the ancient sense of the term. Everybody who works for anybody, because you have to, is a slave. There are very few barons and kings and princes and sheiks, very few. So again, why am I saying this? We're so opposed to that word. I can't tell you, join the slavery force of Jesus Christ. And really, I mean, it's just not going to fly, right? So we have to start somewhere. And it's right here in seeing that Moses, the slave of God, is only an amplification of Adam, Genesis 2:15, the slave in the garden, and of Israel, all of them in Exodus 3:12. Israel, God's slave. As a way of saying to you, slavery to Jesus Christ is liberation from falsehood. Truth is to be under God, not above him. And that word slave, while it is not good for brothers to enslave each other, it is marvelously good for the father to keep his son under true authority. So then Paul will pick up on this, the distinction between slave and son. You're not just slaves of Christ, you're adopted into the household. You are sons of God, but a true son of God knows what it means to serve. And it doesn't mean what we mean with that word. It means I hear and I do because I know you're right, Father. I- well, human fathers fail at this and yet are owed it because he, our Father in heaven, does not fail at this and has proven it in the death and resurrection of Jesus for us. Yeah. So being slaves of God, not such a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. All right. From there, the commission to Joshua is just absolutely invigorating. I want you, every time you come to these verses, I would say beginning at verse 5, to remember your baptism into Jesus Christ, that there are no promises of the Old Testament to the patriarchs, prophets, and men of God of old that are not fulfilled in Jesus, as their promises to Jesus, for Jesus, which he receives and completes, and then turns around and says they're free, and he starts throwing it like seed to the world, to you. Right? So all of the Old Testament promises in Jesus belong to the nations, to anybody who wants them. If you hear the word turn and pray, he will hear and save. That is the grand gospel, the promise of God. So this is one of those promises which your baptism being a external ritual with water that Jesus started himself with all of his power and binds you to his kingdom, it gives you the right to believe this is for you, right? That no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Now, this doesn't mean that if I just keep training jujitsu and go get in a tournament, I can beat everybody just because. That's not what this means. But it does mean that I don't have to fear a single person I look eye to eye ever. And the key is to have an awareness of God being with us at that moment, which I'll admit I lose that all the time. But when I don't lose it, I'm less afraid. And that's the walk. You're not going to flex this muscle and never have to work it out. Every day is a workout of, is God with me? Yes. Why? Because he said so. No man shall be able to stand before you. You start believing that, you will look people in the eye more strongly. It's true. Wear your baptism. No man will be able to stand before you as I was with Moses, right? Speaking face to face, loving him near and dear. Not a moment of your life goes by that Jesus doesn't see and that he's not even speaking to you. He is. Are you listening? Is the question, right? Do you hear the promise? Are you willing to believe that the sunshine is his mask and the birds are his song, and the wind is his airflow. And every time it passes you, you may remember him. You may confess, or you may think about all the things you got to worry about. Or you may think about all the things you got to build. Those are like your three options. And a little quiet, he's here right now. It does some good. Uh, So, uh, Hebrews 13 says this too, right? I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. I think it's Hebrews 13. Hebrews. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage. For to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. You are the ambassadors of paradise. You divide the spoil of eternity. This is why trying so hard is silly. You're giving it away to those who want it. You're to be ready to give it to those who want it, to those who say, "Give me an answer. Tell me about Jesus. Tell me about God." You're not there to win the evil one by arguing. It doesn't work that way. There's a nice book by C.S. Lewis called Paralandra. It's a little storybook about trying to argue the devil out of the fall. And it's worth your time, truly. Rather than argue with him, verse 7, be strong and very courageous. You may observe to do all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Now, you could fall into that and think, I've got to keep all the law of Moses. No, it's fulfilled in Jesus. Follow Jesus, listen to Jesus, read the red letters, and then the law of Moses will start to make sense as wisdom again. It's wisdom. It's how the law of staying a healthy people in the ancient world came together under God's governance. And all of it ultimately was good for the people at the time. And we may see that now and see how Jesus embraces that, how Proverbs puts it into common language, and then the parables of Christ share it with everybody just as stories that no one really has to explain, but that those who are meant to hear will ask, tell me what that means. Right, again, so the distinction between knocking on doors, are you going to heaven or not? And I got seed to feed the birds. And wherever I go, I want to remember there's birds, there's sparrows. Expect them. Be ready with the seed. All right. So this book of the law, verse 8, shall not depart from your mouth. Study the Bible. Have I not commanded you to be strong and of good courage? So just a great promise to cling to as a Christian and insist to yourself you have the right to believe. Write it down, right? Circle it, remember it. A few closing notes with just 2 minutes left here from some of the study. Shittim, they leave from this place called Acacia Grove. It's called Shittim. Abel Ha Shittim is in the plains of Moab. So where Baal Peor was and Balaam and all of this, that's this big wide plain. And if you can imagine that there's acacia trees spread throughout this plain, but not enough that they call it a forest. And so it's a huge space, and they've been living in this space for some time, and it becomes their staging ground for going into Jericho and the Promised Land. If you really love your lore, Micah chapter 6, verse 5 mentions Shittim um, as a connection to Gilgal. It's a way of describing all of Israel. And then the one I found really interesting, Joel 3, verse 8, speaks of the valley of Shittim, which Joel's into the prophets, we're into seeing visions. So Shittim's not a valley, it's a plain. But Joel talks about the valley of Shittim. Have you heard of Armageddon? Megiddo's not a mountain, but Armageddon means mountain of Megiddo. Megiddo's a plain. Why did the prophets talk about the mountain of the plain, Megiddo, and the valley of the plain? Well, I could say the hills will be made low and the valleys raised up. And a way will be made through the desert, right? It's kind of like that a little bit, but it's all there in the lore when you go looking for it. It's such cool stuff. Rahab, her name means wide or broad. Scholars that I like think she was not just a prostitute. This is an inn, and at every inn you would ever go to, there would be women you could have if you had the money to have them. This is the ancient world or Las Vegas. It's Jericho, which means fragrance of the moon, by the way, or the moon city. Fragrance of the moon. And in this place, again, she's living, and they've heard of the deaths of Og and Sihon. Perhaps you remember Oreb and Zeb, the raven and the wolf. I've tried to help you remember those two kings. They're later in this story, but before you get there, you have Og and Sihon, kings of the Amorites. Sihon means storm, and Og means giants. And Og is called one of the Rephaim, which is the descended ones or the fallen ones, and it's connected to the Nephilim from before the flood. So the giant, he reigns over Bashan, which is, this word means tooth, ivory, plump, fruitful, and soil, which can only really mean Olympus or Eden ultimately. Okay, so Bashan is just their way of saying heaven, right? And that's where your teeth are there. You got ivory, right? So Og, the giant of heaven, and then storm of the ledger, or the calculus, or the reckoning. It was the banking city. They kept all the tablets there and they calculated everything, right? So you got the banker and the warrior on the other side of the Jordan, and they've been demolished by Israel. And Rahab says to them, "We're afraid of you now. We're shaking in our boots. How can we stand against such a God as yours?" And from there, the story of Jericho, we will continue going forward. That brings us to our time this morning in the name of Jesus. Amen. Please rise.